Hello, Money Nation. Welcome to our safe space for all things money and to episode 4 in season 3 of the Hot Money Talks podcast. If you're just joining the community for the first time, let me do a little introduction. My name is Christine Ishampepe, the Money Mechanic, and I help you fix your finances. I am on a mission to equip African millennials and Gen Zs with adequate financial literacy, advice, and strategy so they can journey to financial freedom and live life purposefully on their own terms and to the fullest, because money is no more a barrier. I want you to live your best life. The Hot Money Talks podcast is a series of honest, open, and transparent money conversations that will guide you on your journey to financial freedom. Here on the podcast, we believe 100% that financial freedom is possible with the right set of knowledge, the right amount of time, and the right circle of people. And so I thank you for being here. In our last episode, we learned about how couples can strengthen their finances and their bond as couples through money dates. Today, we'll be talking about 3 practical methods or strategies to help you get out of debt. Now, debt is creepy and can often get out of hand. Take this from me, who struggled with debt for a long time before I got my finances right. And even after I got my finances right, there was that struggle, there was that temptation to often get back into debt. Of course, because debt always has a root cause, and you must know that. If you're struggling with debt, the solution is not just paying off your debt, it is going to the root of the problem and finding out what exactly keeps causing me to get into debt. So before I go into the 3 strategies to help you get out of debt, the very first thing you must understand is that when you want to deal with debt, you must first of all know how much debt you are in. Sometimes we underestimate the amount of money that we owe, truly. So you're like, just like maybe 10,000, 15,000 or highest 50k. Because you've just done a rough calculation in your head. Until you sit down and say, you know what, let me understand how much debt I'm in to the last penny. That is when you now understand how much debt you're in. So the very first step at any point in time to get out of debt is to first of all know how much debt you're in. Know your liabilities. Who do I owe? How much do I owe them? Is there any interest rate on top? When is the deadline to pay? What is at stake? Do you understand? Very, very important. Of course, it's also important that you get to the root of the matter, like I said, to know where exactly or what exactly keeps pushing me into debt. Where exactly is the issue? Okay? So now, let's move on to the 3 strategies I'd like to share with us. The first one is what we call debt consolidation. Now, with debt consolidation, this is a repayment strategy where you add all of your debts together, roll them into one, and then take one single debt to pay off your debt at once. So when you do this, you will now be left with only one debt to pay, one creditor to pay over a period of time. So let's make this practical. Let's say you have 5 different debts, right? And they amount to a total amount of 250,000 naira. Now, with debt consolidation, what you're going to do is that you're going to find someone or find an institution or wherever you can borrow money from and borrow the sum of 250,000, and then you will pay back all the debts that you owe and then begin to now pay that one debt of 250,000. Now, usually debt consolidation can be applied when all of the debts that you are owing need to be paid at once. Maybe the pressure or the deadlines are literally clashing against each other and you cannot negotiate, or your negotiations with your creditors are not really going well. Okay? Or sometimes it just even helps your mindset. Instead of owing 5 people, let me just owe 1. Okay? Now, the second method is the avalanche method. Now, this is a little bit more complicated, so I'd like you to listen very carefully. Now, with the avalanche method, this is where you focus on your high interest debt. Now, with this method, your goal is to eliminate your most expensive debt to save you the most money. Now, as you continue to make payments on all your other debts, you push any extra funds towards the debt that has the highest interest. Once you are done, you move to the next most expensive one. So let's take an example. Let's say that you owe Bank ABC 1 million naira with an interest of 10% annually, which means that you will pay 1,100,000 after 12 months. And then at the same time, you owe Mr. A 800,000 naira, but with no interest rate. Now, you can choose to be paying 50,000 naira every month to each of the two loans. So you're servicing both loans at the same time, which means that it will take you 22 months to pay Bank ABC and then 16 months to pay Mr. A. And even that 22 months to Bank ABC, the money will even be more because you are in 22 months, you've passed 1 year of holding that money, which means that the interest will accrue and move on to the second year. Okay, so let's say that along the line, in paying this 50,000 naira to these two loans, you get a salary bump or you start another side hustle and you now have another 50,000 naira extra to allocate to your loans. You can now take that extra 50,000 naira and then allocate it to the loan that you owe Bank ABC. Why? Because it has the highest interest rate. If this happens, it means that in 11 months, you would have paid off Bank ABC completely. And then what you can now do is that this is not your happy day. This is not your day to go and remain. No, you now take the 100k that you were using to pay Bank ABC and then add it to the original 50,000 naira payments that you've been, paying to Mr. A's loan to now make it what? 150,000. This now means that in 2 more months, right? Let's assume that you finished paying Bank ABC in 11 months. It means that instead of taking, 16 months to pay Mr. A, after you're done paying Bank ABC in 11 months as opposed to the 22 months you would have been paying, right? It will now mean that you have just 2 more months to pay Mr. A and you'll be done paying off the money that you owe Mr. A. Now, one thing to note with the avalanche method is that it doesn't matter how much your loan is, even if the loan with the highest amount is interest free. The focus is to tackle the loan that has the highest interest rate first, or the interest rate has an interest rate at all, because the more time you take to default on payments, the more your liability increases because there is an interest accruing on that loan. Finally, we have the snowball method. Now, in the snowball method, this is now the reverse of the avalanche method. Under the snowball method, you're going to be tackling the debts with the lowest balances first. So you will take the strategy that I shared in point 2, which is the avalanche method, but then you will apply it to the lowest balance first and then move on to the highest balance. The disadvantage of this method, though, is that you may lose more money to interest charges and your repayment period for loans that have higher interest rates will be longer. However, on the other hand, a lot of people use the snowball method, to just boost their morale because, okay, at least I've paid, let's say I have 10 different loans that I'm owing, right? It is that 10 that keeps ringing in your head. But if you're able to pay off one, even though it may be 5,000 naira, you pay it off, the loans remain 9. Do you understand? You pay the second one off, even if it's 20,000, you pay it off. You now have 8 different loans instead of 10. So the snowball method helps just keep you motivated to say, okay, if I can pay off these smaller loans, right, let us pay off the smaller ones and then tackle the larger ones. So these are 3 debt repayment strategies that you can consider if you're currently in debt and you're wondering how to get out of debt. Now, assuming you're in debt, now that you've listened to these strategies, which of these strategies do you think you would want to try out? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section of this podcast. Did you enjoy today's episode? I kept it short and simple, and I hope it was helpful to you. Thank you for listening. Now, sharing is caring, so please go ahead and share the link to this episode with someone you want to see win with their finances this year and beyond. It would mean the world to me if you took a few minutes to leave me a review in the comment section of this podcast so that others can see your endorsement and join the community of listeners who enjoy this podcast. If you have any burning questions that you'd like me to answer on the podcast, please shoot me an email via talktothemoneymechanic@gmail.com and let me know your dilemma. Don't forget that new episodes of the Hot Money Talks podcast drop every Saturday, and you can listen to them on your favorite podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Subscribe and follow the show on either of these platforms so that you are notified whenever an episode is released. Recommendations are powerful, so please tell your friends and family about this podcast so we can journey together. To connect with me on other platforms, do well to follow The Money Mechanic at The Money Mechanic page on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I hope most importantly that you will take action on your finances today. Sending you love, light, and a sprinkle of money in between.